Hey guys, so welcome back to the dashboard series. In this video we'll kick off the control panel, as I like to call it, which will go down here, which will have our controls in it. So we've done a bit of stuff on the dashboard here. We've got our header row, we've imported the data that we're going to need, but now we're going to get into the stuff that you guys really probably wanted to see when you started viewing the series. It'll give you an idea of how to build the controls, and then we'll move on to different things like the graphs and so on as we move through the dashboard. So let's get started with this control panel. So we'll start off by writing an HTML div. We'll do another one, HTML div. And then what we'll do here is we'll have a new HTML component that we haven't seen yet, which is HTMLP, which is just paragraph. And what that allows us to do is we'll put some text in here. So we'll go select aggregate summary years. Oops. I just got the years in bracket there because you can select one or multiple, and then a colon, and then we'll give it a class name and we'll call it a control label. And so what this is effectively going to do, and we'll see in a minute when we look at our dashboard once we load it, but it's basically going to be the label for what our control is, which is coming. So under the HTMLP component here, we'll go DCC, and we haven't seen this yet either. So up until now, we've been using the import-html components as HTML. So that's when we go at html.div, html.p, html.button, whatever. And then now we're going to start using this one as well, which is the dash core components, and we've imported that as DCC. So we come back down here and we're going to go DCC, and the component we're going to use is a checklist. And here what we'll do is we'll give it an ID first, so we'll call it summary underscore years, and our options will be our year options. And so if we come back up here, this is why we had to create this in the last video, because what it's going to do is it's going to provide this list of dictionaries, which had a label, if you recall. It had a label of 2017, a value of 2017, then a label for 2018, a value for 2018, and the same for 19 as well, because they were the 3 years in our unique years that were generated from the data. So that's why we had to bring in the data before we could move on to this stage here. So that'll be our options, and then if we have a class name, we'll call it a DCC control, which again is linking back to the CSS file. And value, we're just going to pass it an empty list. So I'll show you what would happen if we change that in a second. So we'll save our code now, come back over, and as you can see here, we've now got, this was our HTML.p, which was our text, and this is our checklist where we can check the boxes here. And so if we had to say, for example, if we, instead of providing this an empty list, if we just had to put in 2017 here and hit Control S, when we reload it, it comes in as pre-populated as 2017, but we're just going to run with it as an empty list for now, so nothing has been selected when we start. So we move down, and just to space things out a bit here, we're going to go html.br, which is just a break, so it gives us a bit of space before the next html.p. So in our next html.p, we're going to go select calendar years for loss ratio comparison graph, and we'll call this one a class name. Again, it's a control label. And so what there's going to be is we'll keep going and I'll show you in a moment. So we'll go dcc.drop down here. So this is the actual component. So similar to a checklist, but we're using a drop down now, and we'll go ID, and we'll call this one loss ratio years. Options are going to be year options. Multi equals true, and value equals our unique years. So we'll save that. Come back over here. So it's given us this drop down, and it's pre-populated with, as we saw before, the value. We've given it unique years, which we saw up here was just a list of the years, which were 2017 to 2019. So that's why when we come in here, we've got 2017, 18, 19 here. The reason why we could have all of them here is because we've gone back over in our code, we've gone multi equals true. So it allows us to have multiple options here. If we wanted to close them off, we could say hit the close, and then we can select them as we please. We can have 2018, 19, close off 19, and so on and so forth. So that's going to be our drop down, and what we're going to do is when you select these years, there was a graph in this space over here to the right of the control panel, and it's going to, these years are going to correspond to what years we wanted to include in our bar graph. So it's going to obviously include a bar for 2018 as it currently stands, because there's 2018 in there. If we have them all, which was our default, we'd have 3 bars in our bar graph for a loss ratio for 17, 18, 19. So we'll keep moving here, and we'll have html.p, and in our text here we'll go select month range for loss ratio comparison graph, and class name again is a control label, and then DCC, well, this time another new one, we got a range slider, and we'll give that an ID. We'll go loss ratio months, min, we'll just set it to the min of the months, max, it's going to equal max the months. Our value here, we're going to go a list, and we're just going to go min months, min months plus 12. And we'll go here, we'll go marks, some months dict, so that's why we needed that dictionary, and we'll go class name, and again it's going to be a DCC control. So if we save our code there and we come back and have a look at what it's done, so it's given us this slider here, and in the intro video again, it was allowing us to take ranges essentially. If you just wanted all 3 as it is now, all 3 years, and the annual loss ratio for each year, you could just have it from Jan to December. But if you say wanted it for all 3 years, but you only wanted to look at the corresponding loss ratio for each of those years for the June quarter, you could just go from April to June, and it's going to give you that range. So there we are there. We'll now put in down here, we'll go another break to give us some space here, and we'll continue on, and we'll go html.p again, and in here we'll go select years for claims severity distribution graph. Again, class name, it's a control label. So as you can see here, it starts to get a little bit repetitive, but that's not so much of a bad thing when there's a lot to take in at one point in time. So it's nice to see some familiar code again. We're going with another drop down here. The ID will change though. We'll have an ID of, we'll call it severity underscore dist for distribution years. Options equals year options, which we've also already seen. Multi equals true, which just allows us to have multiple years in our drop down instead of just having to select one year from the range of values. And the value will just go unique years, and here we'll just access the last value, which is 2019. So that'll be our default. We'll break this one up again. So html.br, another html.p here, and we'll go here, we go select years for sum insured distribution graph. And if you don't remember, when we took the tour around the dashboard in the first video, these were the two graphs at the bottom. So the long ones that went across the whole page, it was the claim severity distribution that we could see, and then the sum insured distribution that was below that. And we'll put a class name here. Again, control label, so as we've been doing. Another drop down, so DCC drop down. ID, we'll call this one sum insured years. Options equals year options again. Multi equals true, and value equals unique years, and we'll put in 2019 again there. So we'll save our code here just to make sure that we haven't got any errors in it, and it looks like we possibly do. Okay, so let's come back and have a look at that. So what line was that on? 131. There we go. I think we missed a comma here, so we'll save that again, clear this out, run our app, and hopefully it works. Yep. Come back here, and so we've got our checkboxes up the top. We've got our first drop down here, which is going to feed into the loss ratio comparison graph, the range slider, which will also feed into that graph, the drop down here, which will feed into our claim severity distribution graph, and our next drop down here, which will feed into our sum insured distribution graph. So when I said it, and when you would have seen it originally, it was in like a box or a container, if you like, that was sort of in that region there, but this is going across the whole page. So what we can do here, or what we will do, is we'll come down here and we'll go class name, and we'll go pretty underscore container, and we'll go 4 columns, and we'll give it an ID of filter dash options. So we save our code again, and as you can see, it's put it in this container. You can see the shadow there on the edge, so it's in this container now, and it allows us not only to put the graph here, it just tidies everything up again. You didn't need those drop downs to go across the whole page if you only got 3 years in them. So, and even, yeah, so that's there nice now. So I think that'll do us for this video. It's basically got our control panel ready to go. Obviously it doesn't do anything because it's not linked to anything at this stage, so there's no functionality built into our dashboard, but we'll obviously get to that point as we move through the series. So if you thought this video was helpful, remember to give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and I will see you in the next video.